Hello everyone and welcome to High Strangeness in Alaska. This is the 7th episode in a week. I've been able to do an episode every Sunday, and I just wanted to thank everyone for all the encouragement to keep me going. I know I did a few Bigfoot videos before, but now I'm doing them every Sunday, and I'm really excited, getting a lot of encouragement from friends in the business and my local buddies like Daryl, who looks forward to it every week. So I wanted to thank you guys. I also wanted to give a shout out to some of the other investigators locally here. First of all, we've got Beans Baxter. His YouTube channel is Alasquatch. I'm going to put a link to it up here. Please subscribe to his channel. He's doing great stuff. Rob Roy Menzies, the owner of the Bigfoot Art Gallery. He's featured on a whole bunch of my videos. I'm interviewing him, and we're planning on doing investigations with Beans too. He has his YouTube channel, Rob Roy Menzies. I'm putting a link right up there. And finally, Fred Roll from Subarctic Alaska Sasquatch is a great resource. His channel is huge. I'm putting a link right there. We're planning on getting together too and doing some interviews and investigations together. So please subscribe to all three of those channels. We're the main Alaska Bigfoot investigation channels, and we kind of started a little group here, and it's just been a lot of fun. So, and of course today, another Alaskan episode from Small Town Monsters releases, and I want to thank Alex Petikoff too, because he's kind of mentored all of us and been a friend to all of us. So please check out Small Town Monsters, and their stuff is just great. So it's been a few years, but I did an episode on the different types of Bigfoot that exist in Alaska, and I think I was wrong about some things, and I've learned a lot since then. So I do want to talk about Bigfoot in general around the world, these humanoid ape-like creatures, subspecies in between them, and then we're going to talk specifically about in Alaska if there's a variation, and I'm going to interview Rob Roy Menzies on that too. So first of all, a great resource was shadowsquadron.com. They have an article. I'll try to put a link in the comments to the 8 types of Bigfoot. I think it's a great article and a great resource, but I disagree on a couple of them. So first of all, the first of the 8 types is number 1 is Sasquatch, and that is the classic North American Sasquatch, sometimes 7 to 11 feet in height, various shades of color. Typically it's brown or black, but we are going to talk about some of the blonde, brown, and black haired variations. But that is what they had listed as number 1, and it's sort of indicative of North America all the way up to Alaska. So from southern Louisiana all the way up to Alaska, we've got the classic Bigfoot or Sasquatch. Next is one I disagree with. Number 2 is Wendigo. That is definitely, in my mind, not a at all related to the Sasquatch. I think we have our own version around southeast Juneau, Alaska. The Wendigo typically has really long limbs, a bat-like face, big old claws, and it can turn into mist. I used to read the Wolverine comics in the 80s where he fought the Wendigo creature in Canada, and that was actually a pretty good description of it. It's a terrifying, like spiritual-like creature with these long skeletal limbs and these big old slashing claws that can disappear and go into your dreams. Definitely not a Bigfoot. So I know they kind of liken to it because it can be considered big and hairy sometimes, but that's one I disagree with. Wendigo is not in the Bigfoot family. Number 3, I do believe is in the Bigfoot family, and we've had Rob Roy Menzies and Alex Petikoff discuss this, is the skunk ape. So down in the southern swamps of the United States, and what's interesting is it's usually shorter. So we do have variations in height. The skunk ape is shorter, and there's this, I forgot what the syndrome is called, but the farther north you get, the bigger bodied the animals are. So it makes sense. When you're closer to the equator, you're going to be smaller. You look at deer in Louisiana, and then look at deer in western New York. I mean, they're huge compared to their southern counterparts. So it makes sense that the skunk ape is a little smaller, but that is definitely a direct relation to Bigfoot, I feel. So that's number 3. Number 4 is interesting. I'm not very familiar with those, the grassmen, and that is specifically listed as an Ohio cryptid. But from the descriptions, it does sound like it could be a variation of the Bigfoot. And of course, number 5 is the Yeti of the Himalayas. Classic, white-haired Sasquatch creature, super big, 11 feet, 12 feet tall, 10 feet tall. There's been some interesting films in the past of, the walkers going across the snow caps, but tons of legends about that. Definitely, I believe the Yeti is the abominable snowman is a cousin of the North American Bigfoot. So that's a fun one, and I do believe that one. This one I'm not too familiar with, but it's very interesting. The Yeren of southern China. And what's interesting about the Yeren, and that is number 6, is the Yeren is malevolent. It eats people, does not like people. It reminds me of kind of some of the Sasquatch stories we hear from South Central Alaska here, where the Bigfoot aren't so nice and have gone beyond just tree knocking and throwing stuff to scare people, where in the past they've actually killed humans. So the Yeren of southern China, very interesting. I'd like to learn more about that. Another one, number 7, I'm not very familiar with, the Mapinguari of South America. This is more of a sloth-like creature, and I don't believe, this is the second one I disagree with Shadow Squadron, is I don't believe it's related to Bigfoot, because it's more of like a giant sloth with these big claws. Kind of similar in that it's a big hairy mammal, but definitely not an ape-like creature from what I've read about it. So, and we've got the chupacabra from South America and Mexico. That's a cryptid, but it's not really related to Bigfoot either, but it's also very interesting. Finally, number 8, the Yowie, the violent cousin of the Sasquatch that lives in Australia. Maybe it's a giant jump bear or something, drop bear. So kind of interesting. I don't know a lot about the Yowie. I'd like to learn more about it. So there you have it. There are the 8 possible types of Bigfoot, and I have ruled 2 of them out. So we have 6 different worldwide variations of Bigfoot. And next we are going to talk about variations possibly living here in Alaska. So let's roll the footage of the interview with Rob Roy Menzies. I have a theory. Alaska's a big state, huge state. Mm-hmm. I have a theory that there are different species of Bigfoot. Some are smaller, some are different colored, some are a lot bigger. What do you think about, have you heard about different kinds of Bigfoot being in Alaska?
I can only gather the information that I've been researching this whole thing since pretty hard since the early 90s. Mm-hmm. But in my whole take on Bigfoot was I want to know what they look like as an illustrator.
Right.
That's what got me excited. Mm-hmm. That's what got me into it. Is okay, so you saw Bigfoot. Tell me what it looks like while I draw it.
Right.
And then I show them, is it no, the eyes are bigger. Okay, so I did that for a few years.
Okay.
Until I kind of established that they have a certain kind of nose, because I didn't know. Mm-hmm. I thought they had a gorilla nose, but no, it seems like no, they're more aborigine.
Okay.
And there could be variations of that, because I've also heard the opposite. I've heard opened. I've had a gentleman once tell me that the Alaskan Bigfoots have a different nose. And I illustrated it for him, and it does look a little different. It's kind of apish, but not quite.
So different than like a California Bigfoot?
Yeah, well, yes,
okay.
According to him. Now, I don't know anything because I don't have all these species.
Right.
But I'm going to guess, just from my experience of listening to people from all around, it does seem like there are possibly different species or that they're adapting differently to what the environment is where they are.
Sure.
The Florida swamp apes seem to be different, way different than the ones, say, up here in Alaska.
Yeah.
People have said the ones in Alaska are really big. And that kind of makes sense, I guess, because everything up here is big.
Yeah.
The food's plentiful. They pretty much have free reign, the whole state. There's just very little people here.
Yep.
I think that would have an effect on a species living here. They could just thrive.
Absolutely.
Versus maybe in Texas or something where they got to fight and they got to like hide and
Right.
there's people everywhere. They're probably angry, and I don't know. But so far from my artistic point of view, it does seem like there's slightly different kinds, I would think. But
Different sizes at times, maybe?
yeah, different sizes. And again, I can only go by what I've been told, and I can kind of go, well, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. But it does seem like the ones in the lower 48 around the Florida swamp, and I can't say they're smaller because I don't know. But it seems like the closer you get to the Pacific Northwest, up to Alaska, Canada, it seems like they get a little beefier. Their demeanor too. It seems like I hear people say, "Oh, the Alaska ones are friendly ones." I don't think there's any friendly ones, but
Right.
I don't know. But I do think that there possibly could be different variations. Brown bears, black bears, polar bears.
Have you heard of like more blondish Sasquatch before?
I have. I've heard those stories. I've heard a few of them. I'm not really here in Alaska much.
Okay.
More of the ones here seem to be dark, real dark brown, or maybe black. Or seems like they're more dark brown here, reddish brown.
Okay.
But I've heard several stories of blonde ones in the lower 48. Even white ones or gray ones.
Oh wow.
So was it Don Keating from Ohio? Hope I didn't butcher his name. But he got that long time got the video of the white one.
Oh right.
And so that's been established a long time. People have been reporting seeing white ones in the past, but again, it's only what I've heard.
Right.
I can't really say if it's true or not, but
Interesting.
yeah, it is interesting. It's very interesting. So
All right. Thank you. So there you have it. I learned a lot from Rob, and he has heard a little bit about, maybe a blonde Sasquatch here or there. But typically, from all the descriptions he's an artist and an illustrator. So he likes getting descriptions from people and drawing them out for his artwork that he features in the art gallery, the Bigfoot Art Gallery in Palmer, Alaska. If you ever visit South Central Alaska, you got to go there because it's really fun to go in the shop and check out the artwork and all the stuff he has there and listen to the stories. But I found it very interesting, so I learned something that typically the most common Bigfoot sighting in Alaska is a very dark-haired hairy hominid that's almost got black hair. And that is across the board what he's heard mostly in his stories. So that was very interesting. I was able to learn something. To me, it makes sense. To have really dark hair, that's like something that evolved in a big forest. Big forest, even when we have almost 24 hours of light in June in Alaska in our summertime, under the tree canopy, it's pitch black. Because, it gets twilight, 3 a.m., 3 a.m. to 4:30 a.m. It's kind of twilight, a little bit dark, even though you can still see. If you're in the forest and there's a tree canopy, tall trees, it's pitch black. So even up here, I think it makes sense for a Bigfoot to be very dark colored in order to blend in with the shadows and the trees and all that. So that being said, I still believe some of the points I made with this illustration I did several years ago of the different types of Bigfoot in Alaska. First of all, I think there are some slight variations when it comes to Southeast Alaska. That's what we call the Panhandle, this area in the far southern east of Alaska. That strip that's got Juneau, Ketchikan, Sitka, Heidelberg, all those places that are connected to Canada at some point, and many islands. That type of Sasquatch is similar to kind of the tall Sasquatch in Northern California and the big redwoods and, you know, the classic Sasquatch. But it's also very different because it's very ingrained in the culture of some of the tribes down there. And sometimes they're very protective of the hairy man stories and things like that. And I think that there's something that ties that Sasquatch to the cultures regionally, and it's very different than other Bigfoot we hear about. Of course, the Bigfoot on the Kenai Peninsula, you know, Port Chatham, is a violent Bigfoot. And, you know, I had some inside information from my uncle that they had to move an entire village in ancient times because the Bigfoot was actually killing people. So we do have accounts of a very aggressive, very violent Bigfoot in some areas of south central Alaska. In western Alaska, from the stories I've heard, sometimes it's almost an ethereal Bigfoot, Sasquatch with glowing red eyes that can come into your dreams and disappear into a mist. Just real strange. Just a couple stories that I've heard. I'm not totally sure about that. I would like to investigate Western Alaska some more. And then the interior, kind of classic Bigfoot, but we also have Bigfoot tied to the indigenous tribes there. Lots of hairy man stories, and stories not everyone knows about. But I mean, you talk about the interior, it's huge. It's bigger than most states. You know, that's kind of the upper portion of Alaska. Tons of Bigfoot stories, but from what I've heard, kind of like the classic Rob Roy Menzies illustration, very large, black hair, you know, big ape-like creature. A new creature that I've heard about is my buddy Tim was talking to an old timer, and this guy, Tim was like, man, if you're serious about this, we can go investigate that. You know, we both have firepower. We're going to go in armed. Because this old timer, he's a solid stand-up dude. He doesn't lie. He told me that there's a little tribe of short, hairy, ape-like creatures with big old fangs and elongated feet, like a hobbit or something. But they're fanged, short, hairy, ape-like, nasty, fanged creatures, and it's on the Kenai Peninsula in a certain area, and we are going to go check that out at some point. It's a great time of year as September approaches. We're starting to get darkness in the evening, but it's still warm enough to go out and investigate. So in the next month or two, I am planning on some expeditions and investigations. Hopefully I'll get to meet Beans Baxter down in Homer, and Rob Roy Menzies and I have been planning some camping trips, so hopefully I get together with those guys. And then my buddy Dobbin has a cabin in a secret location across Kachemak Bay with a lot of Bigfoot activity, and we are going to investigate that as well. So stay tuned. Chime in the comments what you think about different races, types, species of Bigfoot, or if it's just one general creature, or if there's all these subdivisions of what other. It's fascinating. Anyways, I just love it. I'm going to keep these videos going every Sunday. Keep believing, and thanks for tuning in, guys.